Hello fans, this is the latest episode of the Kevin Piland Show since being on hiatus. Now, I'm still, of course the video may be in the old house, but it can be posted with other shots as well, which I figured out it'll work the same. Now, please accept my apology if the move caused a lot of problems, like with the fact that we had to move possibly before February, which is why I said I'd be on in late January, early February. But you know, I've had a lot to think about today, and I figured out that the reason why I probably wouldn't be able to make the money off of YouTube would be because, one, I'd want it delivered someplace else, and number two, I wouldn't want it at my house if I didn't want a specific person knowing about it, regardless of whether I could trust them or not. It's not a trust issue, it's just rather the principle behind the fact that some things are meant to be private, you know? So sometimes you just gotta think about things more creatively. And there's something else I want to talk to you about today. I've done episodes about this as well, based on copyright issues, and I've learned that it's not just about the music. It's also about the news clips as well. Sometimes reporters may wonder, hey, how did this person get access to my video? You know? They get to thinking that they're not protected in any way. You know, you read the policies and you start to question, well, what are they talking about when you say that, when they say that you're rebroadcasting something without their permission? Well, I learned that it's actually because they're referring to reposting them on YouTube without them knowing about it. They have to know up to the minute what's going on, that way they can't say you're stealing. To some people, even though you can access it at your home, it's their version of what most people would call theft of work, you know, but in reality that you're not actually trying to do that at all. You know? However, the only thing that'll always remain the same is when you log on to the Kevin Piland Show Facebook page. The news clips that you see are allowed to stay on because it's not stealing. You're actually sharing something that you find interesting, so that way they can read or watch the video whenever it's available. You know? And a friend of mine, Sean, one of my fans, came to me with a problem, and he said, you know, there's been a lot of copyright complaints lately on my radio station, or his radio station rather, because that's where he was at. Well, he and JB Cloud were talking, if not Fearless Bananas, I'm not sure which, and he learned that if you're not making any money, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You know, some record companies, they have to protect the rights of the singers and stuff like that. You know? And he and I were also thinking of one rule that I wish others would follow as well. You show me 50% of the people that like your stuff, and I'll show you the 50 of those who didn't. Because when you make a request on the radio, there's a 50-50 chance that it'll be played on the radio. It's not just internet radio, it's all radio stations in general, really. Ice.radio in the Mix is what he calls his radio station. It's slayerc.listentomyradio.com, which is where you'll most likely be hearing my video and audio episodes on there as well. Now, the reason why I haven't been on it was due to the move, as I just said. So, please bear with me on that. And now I want to talk to you about a story that caught my attention. Now, have you been known to buy Twinkies? If you have, you might want to listen to this story. America's iconic snack cake baker, Hostess, is filing for bankruptcy protection. The Hostess brands filed for Chapter 11 protection today. This was on January 11th of 2012, for those of you who haven't yet heard about this. It allows the maker of Twinkies, cupcakes, and snowballs to reorganize its finances. The company hasn't commented on whether it plans to lay off any workers or stop making any of its famous baked goods. In its filing, the privately held company said it owes creditors more than $1 billion. I feel like the creditors are just being assholes about businesses because, you know, they're more interested in money than they are about customer service. You see, it's not nice to tell them, oh, we need this money before we can do this. It's just not nice because that's like you telling them that you don't care about them. You know, that's unacceptable. Some published reports have hinted that Hostess has been looking for possible buyers, including Oreo cookie maker Kraft Foods and Campbell's Soup's Pepperidge Farm. But I would say, you know what? Sometimes we don't always make enough money to get stuff done that's needed. You know? And a lot of times we have to delete stuff when we shouldn't have to. And I've heard about this as well. Profanity on primetime television. Now, because kids are watching and they're hearing those words and they're repeating it and their parents can't do anything about it, you know, the FCC is trying to figure out what they're going to do to make sure we don't hear them again. But there's only one problem. The people on award shows or shows just like American Idol, for instance, they don't know that they're not supposed to use that kind of language. They don't even know that the kids aren't supposed to hear it at all. It's not their fault. They don't know what's going on. They blame the networks like Fox and ABC, for instance, for every time a bad word gets used. Well, the reality is it's not the network's fault. It's the people on it. The people on TV aren't thinking before they act. Just like, for example, if I was to say asshole, just like you may have heard during my episode of the Kevin Piland Show, well, YouTube may not be responsible for the bad language, but I would be. I would have to learn to watch my language myself. That's just the best example I can come up with. You know, it's just, you know, people are not thinking before they say stuff. You know, sometimes people just don't think before they post, half the time, especially on Facebook. You know, sometimes we have issues that need to be addressed. But now here comes this battle between the NBC station of Dallas, KXAS, and the Texas Reporter. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll give the Texas Reporter credit for asking the people on there to keep it clean. I have no problem with that. But a lot of times, people just don't think before they post anyway. It doesn't really matter. They're both saying the same thing, but it looks a little different. But sometimes stations have different restrictions and things like that. And a lot of times we just don't even know for sure if this is a good idea or not. You know? Of course, bad language is going to be on Facebook as well as TV. And so the reality is, it's everywhere. It really is. I know this because it's just part of the business. Sometimes we just have to put up with it in order to have a job done or something like that. Now, I am not buying this particular study one bit from Carol 11 News. They're saying that a new study suggests that occasional pot smoking does not harm lungs. I'm not buying a word of it, and here's why. Smoking pot is illegal, first of all. And secondly, why do we even bother reading the reports anyway if it turns out to be false half the time? You know? We always have to check our facts before we report them. Every station's willing to do that. Every station is willing to do that, regardless of whether they're in HD or not. That's their willingness to show us, hey, we can trust them. Now, some of you may be questioning what the deal is with the school employee who faked daughter's death to go on vacation. Well, I heard about it locally 2 days after I shared the, if not the day before. Well, they fired the employee, and they're saying that this person is facing charges. This is according to WUSA9.com, which I eventually saw on ABC World News with Diane Sawyer. But this story from ABC News also is just as upsetting as anything you've ever seen. An Arkansas grandmother says she was forced to rob the bank. Well, the story is that her house was broken into and her husband was tied up. Well, the person who committed the crime forced her to get in a car, take her to the bank, and said, "You better rob this place and don't do anything stupid, because all I got to do is push this button and you're dead." All that crook is doing is getting the grandma in trouble for nothing. It's just like the Brian Wills case. He was arrested, and before the police realized it wasn't his fault, he was dead. Because the way the police handled his case was a lot different than the latest one. See, this one was handled differently because she figured out that she didn't want to end up in his situation. So what she did was, she went to the bank, informed the teller that she was supposed to rob them, but that instead of robbing them, she would let them know that there's a bomb strapped around her knee, or ankle, or wherever it is it's at. And so they had the employees evacuate, and the girl would call 911 and tell them what happened. And the police, thankfully, they did a good thing. The grandmother was not charged with a crime because she did what she had to do to protect herself. She had a feeling that the guy was just threatening her and that it was not going to actually blow up. So everybody has their suspicions. We do take them seriously, but sometimes it ends up being fake afterwards. But anyway, that's about all I got left to say for part 1 of this welcome back episode. And so I'll have more on part 2. So please bear with me as I get used to this new thing. Y'all take care now. And we're back on the what might be the longest episode of the Kevin Piland Show I've ever done, but shorter at the same time. Now, the video you're looking at right now may have taken place at my old place, but the reality is I'm already moved into the new place. And you'll see more of that in the episodes to come, so please stick around for that. But in the meantime, I want to talk to you about the Dublin Dr. Pepper stories that I've been hearing about for the past few days on different websites such as BigCountryHomePage.com and WFAA.com. You know, the people that were working there are feeling sad about it because they like Dr. Pepper and they like to doing it just as much as we like to drinking it ourselves. It was part of the family history. As many of us realize now, perhaps now more than ever, you know, Dr. Pepper has become more of a phenomenon for that business.
But now they're going to be changing their name into a different name, but it'll still have the name Dublin on it. Don't get me wrong, that name will still remain true. The only difference is the Dr. Pepper logo will be completely out. They'll make sodas, just not Dr. Pepper. You know? And then that's when I started to realize that there are fans that like that Dr. Pepper also. I may not know who they are, but I know they like them. You know? But sometimes people you don't know may have the same thing in common as you do, even if they don't want to have anything to do with you themselves. You know, and that's bound to happen. And I have to admit, I have days where sometimes people like the same thing I do, but they don't want to talk about why, or they just don't want to enjoy it with me, which is a slightly difference than just drinking it in general, or drinking it in moderation, as I should say. I can't complain about that. I really can't do that. I can give you the example of what I'm talking about, but I can't complain about it at the same time, because it wouldn't do me any good. Now, there's one change I want to talk to you about. And that is, in the upcoming episode, you're still going to see clips, just no sound coming from it. But you will hear me talking. I will guarantee you that. Also, if the clip has black bars on the left and the right hand side of the screen, you'll be seeing the letters TKPSHD on them. And that is because I wanted to make it look more official that you're watching the Kevin Piland Show in high definition. That way, no one is saying, hey, this is a standard show. It's not a standard show. It's a high definition show. When I first started doing the Kevin Piland Show, it was in standard, I'll admit. But that was because at the time that I did the episodes, I had no idea on how to set the video until recently. And then I realized all I needed to do was change the screen. It wasn't the camera view, it was the screen itself that I needed to change, not the camera, which I eventually started doing in September or October, around that time frame. Now that I got that screen thing out of the way, sorry my head itched during the show. Been having a lot of hard times lately. That's why I haven't been on. Now, something else I want to mention. Oh yeah, you know, it's changes are coming rather quickly. But the one thing that hasn't changed is how my show is still available. Of course, it's always going to be available on YouTube and Facebook. Now, I am thinking about broadcasting a channel that allows you to watch it online anytime you want, day or night, but I don't think that's going to work, because it wouldn't do me any good, because then there'd be no commercials and be like, hey, I don't want to sit there watching this gentleman, so I might as well just turn him off and watch somebody else. I'm like, no. And it's just one of those things. You're listening to the Kevin Piland Show. Hello, fans, and welcome back to the Kevin Piland Show. Now, the earlier shots took place at my old place where I used to live, and this is the new place. It may look a little different, but you'll still see me. You know, the information will remain the same, and that's a promise. It feels good to be back on after a long hiatus that I had to take due to things that I needed to think about, plus the move, you know. And I'm just glad to be back on. To be honest with you guys, I love it so much, you know. It's just one thing after another. you don't have to worry about my hair since I usually wear a hat anyway, and because I forgot to put it on, you know, I just said, you know what the heck. Well, the hat I usually wear is actually on my bed back there, so. Now, some of you may be following Tim Johnston's Facebook page from WKYT. He's the former anchor at KRBC. There was an incident where someone had typed down some inappropriate comments. You know, I don't know what that's about. But, you know, it's just something, it's just damage control that Tim Johnston had to do himself. And I feel for him, you know, he didn't deserve to be going through what he went through. And, you know, that's what he had to delete a fan and block him, you know. But anyway, it's just one of those things that comes to mind. You know, offensive comments on Facebook are not allowed, period. So if you know who's doing that to Tim Johnston's page, please tell them to knock it off. He has a job to do at WKYT, and he does not want his reputation ruined if that's what's taking place. If it's not what's taking place, you know, then what would the story be behind it? You know? And, you know, it's just one of those times when you have to think back to what's going on. Now, on tomorrow's episode of the Kevin Piland Show, I'm going to talk to you about some of the changes that are going to be made. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for watching.